Greetings. Thanks for stopping in on my YouTube channel to watch my latest video. What I want to do is start a short series of videos of some of my favorite turquoise stones from some of my favorite locations. And in so doing, I'm just going to be trying to satisfy a person's taste to see more examples of beautiful turquoise here on YouTube. And before I get started showing you some of the pieces, I want to give a recommendation. If you're new to collecting turquoise, or even if you've been doing it for a while, you should know about some resources, including the Turquoise in America series of books, as well as there's a series of videos here on YouTube that are very informative and educational. And they're conducted with Mike Ryan, who is the co-author of these books, parts 1 and 2. Part 3 is just Mike Ryan, and parts 1 and 2 he's co-authored with Philip Chambliss, who's a turquoise miner in Nevada. And one thing I really like about Mike, I've communicated with him. He's a really meticulous researcher, and whenever possible, he tries to go to the primary source for his information. And his part 3 is a lot of interviews with people in the turquoise mining and turquoise trade and gem cutting and reselling businesses. And there's a lot of history there that he has captured there in part 3. So part 1 is going back to the Victorian period of 1890, 1910. This was going back to the Cerrillos claims of Tiffany, when turquoise was being used by a lot of people in Victorian jewelry, and how a lot of the investment money came into those early mining projects in New Mexico especially, and also Arizona and Nevada. Part 2 is probably my favorite of the 3, and in this book he covers the years of 1910 to 1990, which is really I think the heyday or peak of American turquoise mining. And certainly all of the great classic American turquoises we think of today, we can think of Bisbee, the Nevada mines, number 8, Carico Lake, Blue Gem, the Royston claims. These all got their starts during that period here that's covered in this book. And there's so many pages of history here, and he goes into a lot of detail on where these mines got their start and what their status is today. And in part 3, he covers up until the year 2020, 1990 to 2020, and a lot of interviews again with people who are currently active in the business. If you're interested in more pictorials, while there are excellent photographs in Mike Ryan's books, I would highly recommend, if you can get a hold of one, try to find a copy of Annie Osborne's Jewel of the Southwest from the Nevada Gem Collection, which was owned and curated by Bob Bruscia. And here I have his signature in this copy that I bought from Bob. And in fact, I've bought several stones from him over the years, including some Kingman and some Carico Lake, one of which is actually pictured in this book. So I have a stone that's kind of famous. But I'm going to start this series by going into Kingman turquoise and going into my collection and showing you some of the variety. There are a lot of looks with Kingman, but I'm going to emphasize the Kingman with the very tight, very small kind of spider web look to it that for me is immediately recognizable as Kingman. And that's going to be kind of a theme in these videos. What I really try to specialize collect are those turquoises that have a particular look to them at a certain level. When you get to a certain particular grade of that turquoise, you know exactly what you're looking at, and there's nothing else that looks like it. The green Carico Lake often has a very distinguished look to it. Certainly the Kingman does, number 8 does. Some of the classic Bisbee with its dark chocolatey matrix is pretty easily verifiable. And with so many different opinions and approaches to turquoise, it's pretty nice when you can collect a stone where you pretty much know what it is. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit in these videos. I've always kind of wanted to see more images of some beautiful, well photographed turquoise in videos on here on YouTube. And no matter what people put out there, I always want to see more, you know. I want to see more turquoise. So I'm just going to try to make a small contribution to kind of scratch that itch that those of us who want to see more turquoise have, that maybe we can do that here. So. Okay, so here are some examples of Kingman stabilized turquoise. And when you first go out there to the mine out there in Kingman and check out their turquoise, they have a lot of this rough available. And as you can see, there are many different looks that you can find all from one mine out there in Kingman. And here you have one that's kind of an aqua greenish color with some gold matrix in it. And here's a beautiful gold matrix piece of stabilized turquoise. This little piece here of this dark blue was considered really high grade. I bought this, oh gosh, it's been probably 12 or 15 years ago, and I've cut some stones from it. And at the time they were selling this for a pretty hefty price per pound. And it's, you'd be surprised how expensive something of that grade can cost, you know, easily 3 times as expensive as something like this, which is more of a lighter color. And then here you have kind of a middle grade here. And typically what they do out there is they will take a piece of rough and they usually window and polish the most attractive side of the stone so you can see what you've got. And this is something they've been marketing a little more recently, which they call polychrome, which just means multiple colors. And this has some greens and some kind of a browns, and you can cut some pretty nice stones just because the pattern's so beautiful. And they have a proprietary process out there for stabilizing their turquoise that makes it really easy to work with lapidary material. And you can get some very good looking stones out of some of this stabilized rough. But now let's go ahead and look at some of the other rough they have available that I've actually turned into beads. Okay, so here's a piece of turquoise I bought out there that's mostly clear. It's a very light blue, but I thought it would make for some great beads. And sure enough, it's made some beautiful beads. I'm trying to slice this stone up and make some beautiful Baroque shaped beads that I plan on using in a necklace with some lapis. And cuts up very nice, makes a mirror finish. So sometimes you can make your own beads out of some of their stabilized rough. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the higher grades of Kingman turquoise. We're getting into natural, untreated turquoise. And they've cleaned it up. They clean off as much of the matrix as they can when they get it ready for sale, the miners. And you're left with the basically really just turquoise. And this is very rare. This is vein material, obviously. It's in these real thin pieces that have to be backed, but most turquoise is backed. And it obviously formed in cracks in the mountain. But it has a real kind of glassy sound when you hear it banging together. It's got a real different feel to it because it doesn't have any polymers or resins injected into it to stabilize it. It's just natural. And here, I don't know, it's kind of hard to see from the sides of the stones, but there is kind of almost some variation in there, some kind of what they call water web or bird's eye, so that when you cut it, sometimes you end up with this beautiful, beautiful pattern, which is almost like a mosaic. And here's another one that I cut from this same material. You can see it creates a beautiful kind of mosaic pattern from the different patterns in the way the mineral formed in those cracks. So this would be not their top grade natural, but certainly more expensive than a lot of their stabilized, because natural's much more rare And I would guess more than 80% of what they pull out of the ground has to be treated because it's too chalky and soft to be able to be put to the wheels and cut and then worn as jewelry. Now here's a nice big piece of natural rough I purchased from Kingman, the cobalt family out there at the Kingman mine years ago. Many years ago I bought this, and it's got what they call the water web look to it, and it also has some kind of the whitish matrix, and you can see here it also has some dark webbing in part of the rock. And this is how it was sold. They've polished off parts that they have as that are kind of the most attractive parts, but you never know what kind of challenges you'll find when you get into cutting it. Sometimes you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you find in there too. But I've just kind of enjoyed having this one around the house as a specimen, but certainly on the higher end of what you'd see out there at Kingman. Here are a couple more examples of some veins from natural turquoise in the Kingman line, and this again has that look of the water web, what they call the water web, where you don't really have webs of matrix running through it, but just different shades of blue that create kind of a webbed pattern, almost as if looking through it like through a spider web made out of water. And hopefully you're enjoying looking at that piece because it's really pretty. This one here is very unusual. I haven't cut it, but I've been wondering what to do with it because it's just so unusual. It has such a big pattern, almost like a bunch of stepping stones put together, and also kind of an unusual color. Almost kind of has some creams in there along with the light blue and green. Okay, so now we're starting to get into the really good stuff. And here you have some rough of what Kingman calls red web Kingman. And the webbing is almost kind of a gold and sometimes even kind of a reddish color. And this is a piece of windowed rough to show you what you can expect to get if you start making some stones. It's a nice big piece of rough and quite beautiful. This one perhaps even more beautiful, again showing that distinctive almost kind of reddish color of the mountain in between those areas of turquoise. And this one here, a little bit of a more water webby kind of look, but still what they marketed as red web. So those are some really nice pieces. These three stones over here I cut from this same material, and you can see this one here has a really spectacular pattern to it and kind of an unusual shape as well. And there's a little bit of natural pitting that you'll see on the surface of cut stones. You'll see they're not perfectly mirror smooth a lot of times because that's just the nature. They haven't been filled with all those plastics, so you're going to see more of an organic look to the stones. And real collectors like to see that, you know, all those voids have been left open and not filled with something synthetic. So those are three of my stones off of my wheels. Here's a stone that has some greenish tones with the red web look that I purchased from Bob Bruscia, many years ago now. It's probably been 12 or 15 years ago I bought this from him. And beautiful pattern, beautiful color. And here's a stone I bought from another lapidary they had on Instagram, and I bought this recently. And it has, again, that kind of red web look to it. You know, they call it red web. You could call it gold web if you want. But it has that tight looking web that is very distinctive for Kingman. And typically when you see stones with this kind of webbing, there's a good chance that you're looking at Kingman. Okay, so now we're gonna conclude this video with the highlight, which is really the classic Kingman black web look. And probably the best representatives of that here are going to be this piece of rough. And you can see how tightly the formation is with the tiny little specks of Kingman amid the black matrix. And this is again a piece of rough I purchased from the mine years ago. But when it's been processed into a gemstone, it'll look something like this. And this stone here is a really good example. Any of these real tightly formed stones with a very tight matrix, these would be really good examples of that look that we expect to see from Kingman, with the very tight matrix, and it's very desirable. Okay, it's probably the top of the line turquoise we get from Kingman. It's going to have that kind of patterning. This one here has a little bit more of an open pattern, so it's not quite as distinctive as the tight one, but you can see how it would be something that would come from more of like that kind of a piece of rough. Still very desirable, but when we think of the classic Kingman dark black web, we're thinking of this look. And again, that's one of the reasons I like to pick these stones up, is because they really don't look a whole lot like anything else. That's a very kind of proprietary look we have with that very high grade of Kingman. That's probably one of the stronger stones here in this batch. So that's a little bit about what I like about Kingman, and you'll notice it has a lot of different grades and looks, and I hope you got your feel of seeing just a little bit more Kingman turquoise here on my YouTube channel.